Hey, Schmidlifers. Welcome to the Midlife Schmidlife podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you today's guest. She is New York Times bestselling author, Jane Porter. She has written over 70 romances and women's fiction novels. She has had 3 of her books turned into movies of the week. She started a publishing company in her late 40s, which gives writers more opportunities. And now at 58, she works placing stories with film producers. They have already had several of their books turned into movies of the week. And actually there are, I think she said, 4 in the works right now. Jane believes that you're never too old to reinvent yourself or create the life that you want. She loves to support other writers and see how stories can heal, empower, and inspire others. I know you are going to be inspired by what she shares, the conversation that we have. So let's go ahead and jump in. Hey, Jane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Liz. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I was so excited too. I really am. I want to learn more about, there's so many things. When I was reading what you submitted to be on the show, I highlighted things. And so I'm really excited about this. First off, I have a confession to make to you. And one of the questions I like to ask my guests, sometimes we won't do it on this episode, but I ask, what is your guilty pleasure? And my guilty pleasure is reading romance novels.
Ooh, that's a good guilty pleasure. I approve.
I figured you would. That is, I know some people love like reality TV, and that is just not me. I love a good book. And I know that I actually read the latest one that you just published. And so I just loved it. I just wanted you to know that. So
I love it because I was just at a family reunion retreat with 50 some of us on my mom's side, and there's not a single romance reader in.
Oh gosh!
In most of this, my uncle's married to a wonderful woman, Nanette, who actually buys my books and does read them. But among my DNA family, there's none.
No,
they're a lot like, in many ways, the characters in the book in Flirting with 50, where it's a math, science, engineering, no nonsense, let's get shit done family.
Right. Yeah.
Reading romance probably doesn't make the grade. Now, you can read a crime thriller. You can read something that's apparently good for your mind. I don't know how romance is bad for your mind, but hey.
I know. I don't understand that. I always feel like romance novels, like I feel like they get kind of shit on in the literary world, and it's so unfair and untrue. And maybe that's just my perception of it. Like people don't really see it as real. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, but I get that a lot. In fact, when I used to do different kinds of books, they would always pull in her Harlequin roots are showing, or Jane Porter got her start writing Harlequin romances. And to be honest, it has the best training. If you want to be a great intern, learning to write to fit reader expectations. And Harlequin has a number of different lines, learning what each line, what made readers come to that and delivering on that promise was really good experience. And I still love them, and I will still continue to write for them. I took a break the last couple of years during COVID simply because it was COVID and there was so much happening. So I was all those boys at home.
Right.
And those are a little spicier than some of the other ones I'm writing. And I just could not write spicy with all those males walking in and
You mean
out.
you can't write spicy when you have your 3 teenage sons at home?
Oh my gosh.
Or young adult sons.
Yes. Horrifying. The idea that mom would even still kiss a man is horrifying for them. So,
That's funny. That is funny. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective.
There's something like, they want to keep us, not that we can ever be virginal. I mean, we're moms.
Right.
But like shroud us a little bit in some kind of protective clothing because we're
just like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to see it.
That's my mom. So I will say, and I don't know how it is for you, but my boys are really protective of me. They love mom to the point where I'm a bit of a sucker, but they love they love mom. And
Same.
one of the things that I've been really proud of as a mom is that they understand how important my career has been, my words, my books. And I think that they've really respected that I have a passion. And I'm hoping when they go out into the world and someday are in a very serious relationship, they will do everything they can to empower and uplift their partner. I never want my sons to ever make, especially a woman, feel marginalized, that her career isn't as important as his, or her passion or her work. Because I think I'm at that last year of that baby boomer era. And I didn't necessarily experience that myself with my marriages. I've been married twice. And I think my husband now is, 9 years younger, and he's been incredibly supportive. But even then, he still loves to see his wife in the kitchen at dinner time, making dinner. And
right.
Apparently I love doing dishes too. So there's that.
Yeah, there's that. I just want to say though, I think it's so, I love that you mentioned how your sons really, I get the sense that your sons are a lot like mine in that they're proud, they're proud of their mom. I remember when I released this podcast and when I went out on my own business, they just were so proud. And it's just such a nice feeling to have that support. And I feel really lucky to have that. But then again, it's sort of like, well, we set that example for them too. It's like we did things,
right. Well, and I think by modeling it, I know neither of my husband's moms worked really while they were growing up. And I think one later worked after all the kids were kind of grown and gone, but I've always had that work. And my mom was a speech therapist, and she worked, and her mom worked in a construction company that she started with her husband. She worked, and her mother was a concert pianist. I just come from a long line where I didn't question work. I didn't question that it's about, should you work? Should you be home? All the women got college educations from, late 1890s on. And there were lots of professor dads in the family and grandfathers, and it just was a thing. And then you get out into the real world at some point and you realize we haven't all been raised the same. And I don't think I even thought to check in on those expectations, because I met someone while I had a job and you think, okay, he knows I'm working.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to be fine. And then later you're like, well, my mom didn't. And my mom was like, well, I'm not your mom. And that was kind of my hope with, I think, my sons, because I hear a lot about the next generation and how men should be treating women. But I think if there's any regrets, that my boys don't actually have a sister, because then maybe they wouldn't place a girl too much on a pedestal and because I think they think girls are a little bit different. And I think, no, girls are like you. You just be fair, be equal.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's funny. I'd never considered having a sister, but that would definitely change their perspective of, I figured I would think they would all be protective too of the sister for sure. But that's an interesting thought, just to be able. Go ahead.
Did you have brothers growing up?
I have one sister.
Okay.
So
I had a sister and two brothers. It was like my brother, me, a sister, and a younger brother. And like my brothers were my best friends too. And my older brother was just a year older in school. And so his friends and my circle, and having that big circle where there's lots of women or girls and boys, and then in college, men and women, I think it helped me value male friendship.
Yeah.
In such a way that, again, I wasn't prepared for when I stepped into the role. Suddenly there was a role of being a wife. And I'm like, I don't know that I like this role. Like,
right.
It wasn't how I imagined conversations would go. And so I think hoping, again, my boys say you're ranting, but I would hope, again, my sons make sure that they step up. Because it's too easy for women who are pleasers, and I probably came in that pleaser group, don't worry, I'll smooth things over.
Right.
I'll handle
I'll
it.
take care of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You get the you're ranting too. Come on, Mom.
That's because we're using too many words for those.
Too many words, too much emotion.
Terrified.
Oh my gosh. One thing I want to ask, and then this is a little bit off from what we've been talking about, but how did you start writing? What was that? Was that like one day you just wake up, oh, I'm going to write? Was it?
Yes, I was in kindergarten. I woke
awesome.
up.
Yeah.
I read early. My dad was a professor, but he also did a lot of writing. But very early on, I began writing stories, and I would read kindergarten, first grade, and I would write in response to something that I read. And I remember being very upset when I read, I think it was like Little House in the Big Woods, and Laura got in trouble and got spanked by her pa. I was so upset by that because I felt like there was a lot of injustice.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my dad that I was very upset about it. And then I went and sat down and wrote, those wide lines they used to have. Yes. I wrote how bad that whole thing was, and she should not have been spanked. And then later, probably a year later, when I read Little Women and read that Beth died, I wrote an ode to Beth, a poem I wrote and wrote. And it was just kind of in me to respond to reading with writing. And to this day, that I think that's why I write novels, because it's my way to respond to life. They're just so interconnected. But yeah, I wrote my first story in kindergarten called The Christmas Elf. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I write Christmas romances every year, and I think it started with The Christmas Elf. So,
well, thank you, Christmas Elf.
And here's the thing is, I thought that was what everybody did. I didn't know that not everybody sat around writing things down. So, I turned out later in school. I was a little odd. I wasn't your normal little girl, but that's who I've been my whole life, and it's working so far.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so great. It's funny because I remember we had career day or something. You're going to laugh at this, actually. I think it was in 5th grade. And so we had to dress up like what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I dressed up like an author. Okay. Which is funny because I've never written a book or much of anything, because I ended up, I'll go down that path later. But so I dressed in a skirt, and I borrowed my mom's heels because I was a very large child. I was very tall. And so I was wearing her clothes basically. And I guess I was in 6th grade. It was the same height I am now. So I dressed up like all formal, and then had my hair in a bun. And I'm thinking now, it's like, is that really how authors dress?
It's more like a secretary, probably, but I love it. I love it because the authors, I know for the most part, we are in pajamas all day long.
I was going to say, I should have just come in my pajamas, because that's what I would be in.
Yes. In fact, I would go pick up my youngest from school now and then. I've always had someone help me do the afternoon run, because usually I need to start using that time for writing. But one day I showed up, and my son's like, "Why are you wearing your pajamas to school?" And I said, these are sweats. And he goes, "It's the same thing." I said, "Yes, but they're clean." He was mortified as if everyone looking at me would know that's, and I'm like, and he says, "Do you ever shower?" I said, "Yes, I shower when you're at school and put on," he says, "more pajamas." I said, "Yes, actually."
This is my work attire, kid.
It is. In fact, I was asked to speak at a school to the 8th grade class a year or two ago, and he wasn't in 8th, he was in 5th or 6th. But they said, "Tell us your favorite part about your career." And I said, "I get to stay in pajamas all day long."
I bet all of those 8th graders are like, I want to be an author now.
For all of those who don't like writing, I was trying to give them an incentive.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. That's a really good one. You transition from, so I was going to say just being an author, just take that out there, from being an author, and then into more of the publishing world. And I'm curious. So the reason why I want to ask this next question is because I feel that as women in midlife, a lot of times we think, oh, I can't do that because I've never done it before. Or, it's kind of the kiss of death when we think that, right? Like, it's like, I don't know anything about that, or I know just a little, and I really don't know how I would do that. What was like when you transitioned to include that publishing part? What came up for you in that? Well, like, was it similar feelings? Was it just that this is something I want to do? I know 100%. I'm just curious.
There was my son that year was off at college and struggling a little bit. And I found it very hard to like dive in deep on some of my books. And I thought I need to pull out a little bit and be more available to him. And that was including some trips to Texas. And I was then also around the same time I was in the middle of a book tour for a series with Berkeley. It was my third book in the tour. And so I'd been traveling, and it crossed my mind that I could not keep on the way I was doing to parent at that time. And then because of me I have adult ADHD. I don't know if I've always had it. And I just compensated by always reading and writing, just, hyper focused on what kept me from being, dreamy. But I began to think, if I can't write again, and my brain wasn't lining up to write. And I think it was a mix of menopause, because menopause really impacts language, and it really impacted my writing. Suddenly all the words, because I've always heard the story in my head, almost as if it's a soundtrack. I can hear the dialogue. That was gone. I couldn't hear anything. It was like going to a movie theater, and you're sitting there and you're pretty much the only one in there waiting for the movie to come on, and nothing happens. It just stays blank. And so there was tremendous anxiety and panic, like, where are the words? Incidentally, I'll just say, because I would love to talk about creativity in women, after menopause, because I think that there's so much there not said. I realized, and that never came back. I've had to approach writing really differently. It's almost like I have to make myself see it. I have to do different things to visualize it. But that lovely rhythm of words in my head was forever gone. Now I can sometimes get it back through playing music. It's almost as if when they talk about people with Alzheimer's, music can help them trigger memories. So for me, music can sometimes help me trigger language, but it's never been the same. But I had this kind of grief over the life I'd had, this career I'd had, the inability to write. But I've also had a really good career. I've had, a movie was made. I've won a lot of awards. I used to speak all over the country. I love writing with writers. I love teaching craft. And I thought, well, maybe what I need to do, in case I can never write again, is just work with other writers. Take all that energy and drive I've had that's behind my career and begin to build other women. Because a lot of times in publishing, and let's focus, romance writers by and large are women, and romance editors by and large are women. But back in 2009, there was a recession. Publishing changed, borders closed, Barnes and Noble were taking fewer books, and lots of authors were being told by publishers that they had failed. Well, nobody said there's a recession. The economy is bad. We can't get books into bookstores. They just said to creative women, you let us down. You don't have enough sales. And there was no context. There was no, like, this is really tough. This is happening to lots of writers.
Right.
It made it really, and I think it wasn't necessarily conscious, but the conversation was really painful, as if all these hardworking women were not enough. And that had stayed with me also for a number of years, where I thought, no, publishing agents and editors should be saying, we're in a crunch, and a few people always rise to the top, but lots of people don't. And it's not that they had done anything wrong. It's that it was so competitive that there was less float moving to the top. So I just thought, I'm so fierce in my way. And I was so bothered by how really hard-working women who've supplemented their income or survived on their writing for, paying bills for family, were being treated as if this was a hobby and it didn't matter. And so I thought, let's get behind a lot of those women. Let's work with them. Let's also let me work with writer friends that I admire and respect.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put some of the joy back into it. And so it started out as a small endeavor. And then because Jane is Jane, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we went from, a handful of stories in 2013 to a lot in 2014. And as of now, our 9th anniversary is coming up at the end of summer. And we've published almost 900 books. We have over 140 authors worldwide, tons of awards. We've had 10 movies made from our books. We have another 4 being filmed right now. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I'm like, I guess we're real. And our CFO goes, no, we're real. And I'm like, all right, you have to crunch numbers. So, but I think it was just this fierce frustration of the way sometimes the world talks to women. And most of these women were not like, when I say bright young things, I mean, they're not the sparkly eyed girl out of college who's fierce at 20. They're women who were my age.
Right.
There were women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And this casual dismissal and I still feel that way. Women too often in our society are dismissed and we're not made to feel valuable if we're not, young and beautiful.
Right.
Beauty's way too much of a focus for women and youth. And the fact is we're all going to age.
Yeah.
And so what? The world's going to throw us away? So I'm fighting that all the time. I wish our culture appreciated what we bring to the party now, because we bring so much.
Yes, we do. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is, so we're in a season right now on the podcast called Reclaiming Midlife. And, the conversations I'm having is it's not just the world that we live in, it's how we see ourselves too. And shifting from that place of, I'll never forget the first time I was called ma'am. This just kind of like popped into my head, and like the horror and the, just how I felt about myself at that point. It changed everything. And it took me a while to get out of that. Like, I really thought like, well, it's downhill. I'm like sliding fast, and why would I do that? And now that I've, come out the other side of that, and, really it's funny because, I was always regarded as a young woman as being a pretty woman. When the wrinkles start happening, when, you realize internally that the way that you looked is changing, that was almost a gift to me, because I quit relying on that. I think I realized how much I was relying on looks to, just to be who I was. And there was so much more to me. And I used to get pissed off when people would, that's all they saw me for, but it's like, well, that's all you're seeing yourself for. So it's an interesting thing too, that as women, as we're getting older, like we need to really start embracing where we are and what we do bring to the table. And so I always feel like, yes, the world out there is like, it's got its own issues, but the world in here where we are inside, like that's where it starts. And
that I love that. And I learned slightly differently than you, but a similar lesson in that I wasn't really pretty in school, or I wasn't viewed as pretty, because by 4th grade, I had very, very thick glasses. I was, encyclopedia head, Coke bottle face, 4 eyes. I was a nerdy girl who wrote, poetry and stories at recess. And it wasn't till I came back from, my family lived in Europe for a year when I was in 8th grade, because my dad was teaching for the military in Germany. And I came back and I'd gotten contacts and I was growing my hair out, and I went to a new school, and suddenly people were like, oh, she's kind of cute. And I was viewed differently, but I had never, and then not wildly, but I did start doing theater towards the end of high school. My hair had gone long, and on stage there was makeup and, the 80s, hot rollered hair.
That's right.
But I remember reading this review, and I think in a local paper saying, she's as pretty as she is talented. And I remember reading that line over and over, like somebody called me pretty, because I hadn't been. In fact, at 13, I remember staring out a window in my bedroom, looking up at the sky, saying, dear God, please make me pretty and happy. I was I was so alien in my skin, and I was so intense, and I had all these emotions and words and dreams, and I didn't know how it would come together. So later, I realized perception is so interesting with people.
Yeah.
That they chose to perceive me as pretty. And then I realized the power that can be taken away conversely. And it wasn't really an issue, like saying getting jobs out of college. If anything, being polished and attractive seems to help you get jobs. But I remember in the writing world, when I was back in an organization filled with women, there were some, not all, but there were some who literally thought because I hot rollered my hair and I wore lipstick and whatever, that I could not write. And there was this pleasure in me not being published. And then all of a sudden I was published, and it upset some of the women, like, well, you can't have that much. Right. And that's when I really began to read a lot about, female dynamics in the workplace, women who get the corner office, what it takes to get ahead. Women in linguistics. I love Deborah Tannen. She's brilliant, and she would talk a lot about like the cues of language and how guys use words and girls, and it starts very, very young. And what it takes to get into the guy world is being daring, adventurous. What it takes to get into the girl world, it's keeping secrets and talking about each other. Right. Which I never had that. I was the one that people didn't include. And so it was really an interesting thing growing up and being on the outside and analyzing. And I now have some very, once you're my friend forever. And I have friends from, high school, college, career, but it's a bittersweet thing because, if we're not surrounded by other women who also build us up and support us, or if we feel like we don't get support from maybe the men in our life, it can be really lonely. And I think that's why I write books for women. And I've had men say, well, not for me. I'm like, well, you could read them if you want, but I really write them as if I'm saying to another woman, hey, friend, or hey, listen, you're valuable and you're important. And I'm going to give you a story that hopefully you see how we can learn and adapt, and we can love, and we can let go of things so that we can feel good about ourselves. And that's kind of my mission for the last 10, 20 years. And that's going to be it till I die, is that I'm not, because I have personally strong faith, but my faith, and I discussed this with one of my sons who's a philosophy major at Occidental, I'm not here to judge. If anything, my whole thing is to love and to empower, to inspire, to, help women make the most of all the time. Like you say, reclaim your life and your value and seize your value. Right. Yeah. But it's easy to have people throw stones if you're on social media or you listen to too much news. It can sound so scary. And that's where I think your podcast is so important, because you can have conversations letting women know, don't buy into the BS. Right. Yeah. It is BS. And it's to make us want to go buy more stuff to fix us, spend more money on things that don't change. What changes is when we support each other, love ourselves. Yeah, there's so much of that. So I feel like I need to throw this in here that I wasn't a pretty girl either until after I had buck teeth and wore glasses. So I there's so much of your story. I was like, oh yeah. And then I was also in engineering. So I was a pretty girl who had brains. Right. Bad. So yeah, it's just, I loved how our stories could converge like that. Because I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah. Yeah. Because I think we forget or we smooth over the growing up, and that growing up stays with a lot of us on the inside for a long time, and how either your family treats you, or your dad, or your siblings, or mom. I think how they, I was the sweet one in my family. I wasn't the smart one. And my sister's beautiful girl, blonde, blue-eyed, brilliant math science. She was the smart one. She was the one who got to do the gifted program, but I just missed it. My mom would say, but you're sweet. And I'm not actually that sweet. I'm a little bit salty and spicy. So I was terrified that if my greatest strength was being sweet, I was in so much trouble.
But see, now being salty and spicy is like the thing. We need more salt and spice.
Well, women should, I'm not militant out there like on a street corner, but I'm militant behind the scenes saying to women, like, you matter. And I don't feel like society often says to women that they matter, not unless we do what they want, dress a certain way, vote a certain way. Oops, not getting into politics. But
we could.
but we're supposed to kind of be good.
Yes, be good.
Be good. And what is that? Boys, we both have raised boys. I do say to my boys, behave, be good, because their natural inclination is just to do what they want.
Right. Yeah.
Girls, I don't know anyone who just says, and we should, at least when I was being raised, oh, go do whatever you want. Yeah. Maybe girls now are getting more of that. I also think girls now are getting wonderful coaching from sports coaches, until we also hear how they've been often quietly, privately taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But we need more coaching so that women can grow up and girls can become women who know. Like, I had a son, and I wrote an article on this for a romance magazine years back, but it was on writing and the craft of writing. But he was just a little guy, and he was going up. He was kind of like in fifth order, batting. So he was like a hit, kind of a cleanup hitter. He was a little husky kid, and the coach was saying each time, "You got this. This is yours. You own this." And the first time he swung and he struck out, missed, and then it was another big swing, big miss. And the coach the entire time kept saying, "Jake, you own this. This is yours. This has your name on it." Yeah. And the third time he connected hard. And I don't think it was a home run, but it was like either a double or triple. And I remember in that moment sitting in the stands thinking, I have never been talked to that way in my entire life.
Right.
No one said, this is yours. You own it.
You own it. Yeah.
This is like, you got it. You got it. If anything, it was, I don't know. Maybe, if you're lucky.
Right.
As if any success we women have had is because of luck. And that just stayed with me. And so I was joking with these writers saying, okay, when I sit down my keyboard, I'm going to go, you got this. You own this. This one's yours.
Well, we should do that. We should talk to ourselves that way. And we certainly should lift other women up that way, which, excuse me, which I love that this is what you did with your publishing. Basically that's what you did. You were lifting up other women to have a career that you loved, and you were wanting to support them in that. And I also want to call out something here, because I feel like this is important, because you made this decision based on a family need. And there was a real choice in that, because I've seen this happen a lot. Some of my coaching clients, we've talked about this, is sometimes family needs can go the opposite, where women will just think, well, I'm just going to throw in the towel. This is, yes, it's important. I'm not saying that it's not, but they almost sacrifice themselves for the sake of what's going on. And you handled both. I'm sure that wasn't easy at times, but you did both.
I think that part is such a piece of me, because writing is for me. It's my thing. No one thought I would actually sell. It took me 13, 14 years and as many rejected novels before I sold. I started submitting in college. I didn't sell till the year 2000. So from 1988 to 2000, I was writing, rejected, writing, rewriting. And every family reunion, some well-meaning uncle or cousin would say, "Oh, have you sold yet?" And as if, again, that's the definition of success. And I'm like, nope, but I haven't given up. And I always joke that if the fairy godmothers, like in Sleeping Beauty, were over my crib, my little bassinet with their wands, they all gave me tenacity. I mean, they could have given me some others like patience,
Right.
but tenacity. So I don't give up. I didn't want to give up. But at the same time, that doesn't mean there wasn't intense criticism from those who were like, who do you think you are to start a publishing company? You're not a publisher. What do you know about publishing? And one of the phrases I must have internalized somewhere at some point, because it became very loud in my head, was, well, why not? What's the worst that's going to happen? It won't work. I'll fail. But if I'm failing something, it means I tried something. I'm taking risks.
Right.
If I'm failing, it's because either I haven't tried to take a risk or I tried and it didn't work. But I had to, as an adult, really change the meaning of the word fail. I had to embrace risk. Instead of it being a bad thing, it was a really exciting thing for me personally, especially as I went from, like, say, through late 30s to 40 and then 40 to 50 and on. It was, let's risk. What else are we going to be doing with the rest of our life?
Right.
I don't want to be complacent. I don't want to be sitting home left behind by a world. I want to be part of the world. I want to engage. And, I wrote a book when I was 40 called Flirting with 40. And I think that has so much of my personal, like, psychology in it, and that I was massively changed. I went through a divorce at 40. My world was broken open. My heart was broken open. And what I realized was happiness isn't going to come to you. You have to go after it, and you have to make decisions that allow you to be happier. And if you are, you have something bad in there, or you're disappointed, or whatever it is, waiting in line, like we're at Baskin Robbins, for your turn does not happen. Your turn will not come by being good and waiting in line.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And I had been waiting. I thought, I'm doing this, I'm being good, I'm listening, I'm supporting others. And at 40, I was devastated because I thought, my then husband, who's the dad of my two older sons, we've become friends now, but we were at a point where he was not happy. And did that mean I was never going to be able to be happy because he could not choose to be happy? And I suddenly had this picture of us being, in our 80s and him still unhappy. And I would have had a whole life because again, there's that nurture caretaker part of me that was raised to take care of others.
Sure.
But to the detriment of myself, to the detriment of my children. Right. And I finally thought, a ship is going down and I'm on the ship and letting my kids go down. And this isn't okay. Letting go of other adults and saying they're an adult. You can hear all the codependency in everything I say. But it was like I was committed, and he was a paraplegic. I'd met him when he was in his wheelchair. He's brilliant. But I also realized I can't fix an accident, and I can't fix what happened to him. I love him, but our kids are suffering.
Right.
And I chose to pull them off and out before we were all under. Now, society again had things to say. Oh, this romance writer left her husband who's a paraplegic. That poor man in the wheelchair. No, Joe's probably the smartest man I know. Brilliant. Right. Brilliant. I admire him so much. IQ of 180 something. The guy is not poor. He's handsome as all heck. I will always love him. I admired him so much. But what it taught me was you can't also live for another and please another, hoping you'll get that validation back so you can like yourself.
Right.
And there was just so much. So the whole 40s for me were about change. And like you say, reclaiming your life. But I realized I didn't even know who I was, really.
Yeah.
I thought it was those roles, being a wife, being a mom. Well, you take that away in a divorce. I wasn't a wife. My kids weren't with me half the time now. I wasn't a mom. I didn't really want to be this writer person because that felt fake. I love to write, but I don't want to be the author persona. And So I have to say, my life is so different than it was. And every now and then I feel like maybe that other life didn't even happen. But then I'm like, no, I'm choosing my future. I'm choosing to embark on new careers. I'd never made films, and now I'm working as a producer on some. I'm finding films to pair them with producers. I'm doing things that's totally out of my comfort zone. But what is similar is, as a writer, I love story. As a publisher, I love story. As a film person, I love story. Now, do some of the tasks, are they different? Is some of the knowledge different? But there's nothing we can't learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've taken a strength I've had my whole life since that little kid in kindergarten writing her first story.
Yeah.
And I've realized, though, that story is important to everybody, though. Even if you're a non-reader, you like to maybe watch movies or you like TV shows. Stories are metaphors for us. They help us, relate or compare. And I don't know, I guess it gives my life meaning. And bottom line is, I think that's what women have to do. Whatever it is that gives a woman meaning. Yeah. Whether it's something like quilting and making things, being creative, being with her kids, taking care of grandkids, doesn't matter. Whatever gives meaning is the thing we should be proud of and hang on to. Yeah. Because we're all different. We're going to be different. We shouldn't, one isn't better than the other.
Yeah. And that's where supporting other women is so important. It really, really is.
Well, especially now, I think as you get to a certain point, you realize, I had a conversation with my mom 2 days ago, and she's mid-80s, and there's been a lot of loss in her life. And through COVID, there's been a lot of loss and a lot of isolation, and a lot of seniors have really suffered. And I was listening to her and thinking, wow, where we go isn't going to get necessarily easier. So learning to be kind of gird yourself so you're strong, but compassionate, so that you can take care of you and then try to create a community with others. Because in the end, I think that the only thing we have is love and connections.
So true. Yeah.
So but then again, the kids go, oh, Mom. If they were in the back now, they would be so like, oh, there she goes again.
There she goes again, rolling the eyes. Oh, God.
I get that too. My oldest likes to go, he's teasing. But when I get all feisty, he goes, pipe down, pipe down.
Oh my gosh. I think we need to get together with all our sons, because I think it would be hilarious. So it sounds so good.
They'd probably make a little fun of us, but good natured.
Exactly. Exactly. There is so much I want to talk with you about, because I wrote it down because you said something about women and being creative in midlife. It's like, all right, we need to have that conversation. Yes. There's so many conversations I would love to have with you. And as I'm looking at the time, I'm just realizing that we've had a great conversation. And I just have to say, this is what I get to do with my podcast, right? Yeah. I get to share story and share other women. And I'm just, wow, it's just so honored to have you on the show and just have you sharing just a little piece of your story. And I know that it will encourage other women to take risks and to choose their future.
Well, we're lucky, Liz, that you're doing this, because there's podcasts out there about everything, but there's, what you offer women midlife and on is really important. And you're a friend to them. You're a mentor. You inspire. And I need that too. There's not a lot of people who can come back in and who do that for me. And so I'm so pleased you have your show. I love listening. And I just wish, even though I'm a non-hugger, I thought your show in a way is a big hug. It's a big hug for women, and I'll take that. We all need it. We need each other.
Yeah, I think so too. And honestly, like hearing your story, this is why I started it, right? Because I need it too. So it helps keep me moving forward and being positive, and so glad to share the stories of others. So just thanks. And I can't wait to have you back on the show. So thanks for being here.